Geoserver is a great tool. We can host different types of data, let it be vector data or raster data, on Geoserver and then share it with world using OGC standard. We can also do a lot of things with Geoserver styling to create the styling that we want according to the rules and definitions that we want to set. By the way, if you are facing the problem with understanding how to create GeoServer styling, make sure that you check out my video of GeoServer styling using GeoStyler. Along with OGC standard and styling, GeoServer also takes care of the basic level security. That means you can create the combinations of users, roles, rules, and then groups to create different types of conditions where some user can access the layers of some workspace and other users cannot. This provides a great security at the primary level. But what if we want to go one step further, where we want to also treat a layer as an entity and then define the conditions inside that? For example, if I have a data of all the famous places in the world, and now I want to create a user who once logs in can only see the Indian data. That means all the geometries falling inside Indian extent are visible. Or maybe we want to show the entire world's data, but not all the attributes. This sort of problems can be solved using Geofence. Hello, my name is Krishna and I welcome you to this video. Before diving into Geofence, make sure that you subscribe to this channel where I keep on posting WebGIS related videos. And whatever social media platform that you use, you can find me over there at Krishna G Lodha. Alright, now back to the business. Geofence is a great tool which allows us to create deep level of conditions for security. In this video, we are going to first see how to install Geofence plugin in the latest Geoservers. So the version that I am using is 2.18.4. We will also see how to create roles and users and how to use them in Geofence. And then what are the capabilities of Geofence? What are all the things that we can do with it? Finally, we will end this video by implementing whatever we have did inside Geoserver in the web application. So without further ado, let's get started. Now before downloading the plugin, first check what version of Geoserver are you using. So since I'm on 2.18, I'm going to look for 2.18 Geofence plugin. Notice that prior to 2.15, I think the way that Geofence worked was a little bit different, and also they made some changes in 2.17, and now we are at 2.18 and 2.19 version. So make sure that whatever version of Geoserver that you are using, you're downloading plugin for that only. Alright. Now Geofence basically has two plugins. First is client plugin and second is server plugin. If you are on 2.18 or 2.19, make sure that you download the server plugin. So since I'm on 2.18.4, I will head over to that page and look for the server plugin. Don't download the client plugin. Make sure that you are downloading the server plugin. Once the plugin is downloaded, you can simply copy all the jar files and then paste it in the Geoserver folder. So I will go to the new folder and then inside Geoserver, inside web apps, inside Geoserver again and web inif lib, this is where we want to paste everything. Once that is done, simply restart your Geoserver. Once you have restarted the Geoserver, you will see three new tabs available under security. These are the tabs that we are going to use for Geofence. If you click on the first tab, you will see that we have to do first the test connection. If you have installed the Geofence server plugin properly, this will give you the result as connection successful. That means the internal server is working totally fine. And now before going into the data rules, let us first define our problem statement. If I go to the layers, I have actually uploaded one layer known as places, which is a free data that you can find online at naturalearth.com. Now if I also do the layer preview for the same layer, you can see that this layer holds the point data for the entire world. Alright, and this layer has lot of these attributes available as well. Of course, we are not going to play with all the attributes. We are just going to play with couple of attributes so that you will get an idea. Okay, now the roles and the users that we want. Now consider this scenario. We first want to have a role known as Indian government, where then all the users inside this will only see the data of India and then all the attributes. Then we have Indian public, inside which if user of class 1 logs in, then he will see the data of India and attribute of name, population and rank. If I go for another user in the same role, then he will again see the data of India and then he will see the attribute of name, admin and population. And then anyone other than class 1 and class 2, if they log in, if they belong to the Indian public role, they will only see the name. And finally, if you log in as a user whose role is Asia, then you will see the geometry of entire Asia and then you will see the attribute of name and country. So all of these different roles, users, filters and attributes, all of them belong to the same layer. That is why Geofence is so famous, and that is why we want to use Geofence, because we can then define users, roles, filters for just one layer. Now back to the Geoserver. Now first thing that we will do is we will define all the users and roles. So I will simply head over to the roles and I will create couple of more roles. So for example, Indian GOV, then Indian public, and finally Asian. Alright, now I have three roles according to my problem statement. I will go to the users and then I will create some sample users. So for government, let it be GOV of the role Indian GOV. Then we have class 1. Then we have class 2. Which also belongs to Indian public. Then we have normal users. So normal, Geoserver and Geoserver, which also belongs to Indian public. Yeah. And finally we have Asian. So Asian user. Alright, now our roles and our users are in place. Now is the time to write the rules in Geofence. When I head over to the Geofence data rules, you can see that right now it is empty. When we click on add new rule, we will get a form with multiple fields in it. First of all, priority. We will see the use of priority very shortly. Then we have the role. So let us define the first role for Indian GOV. Okay, now according to our problem statement, all the users in Indian GOV will have the same sort of access. So that is why I will select all the usernames. Now I will go to the layer. My layer is in site and populated places, and now IP range. This defines that from what IP the data should be accessible. If I keep it blank, it will be accessible globally, which is fine for me right now. And then the type of access is allow. So I want to allow this role to access this layer information. Now, when we select a specific layer in the Geofence data rule, we can then go into the layer detail and then specify information based on layer. So this is where all the magic happens. When I click on this, the new form will generate where we can fill all this information. Now the layer type is obviously vector, and then default style we will keep whatever it is. In the Geofence we can also restrict the styling of the data. So if you want some user to see only specific styling, you can do that. Now if I check the data, you can see that for each point I have India written over here. So I can use something like this as a SQL filter to filter my data. So if I do India and if I do the apply, you can see that only data related to India is showing over here. So this is fine, right? So what I want to do in a nutshell is I want this SQL filter to be there all the time when the user of Indian government logs in. So I can simply copy this SQL filter and then I can put it over here. So this defines a SQL read filter. That means whenever this user will read this layer, this filter will be applied automatically. You won't be able to see this filter in the, let's say, network tab or somewhere, but then this will be applied internally. Same thing you can write over the write filter, that whenever you are writing new information, then this filter must be applied. Then for the catalog mode, you can select hide or challenge or mixed. We are going to keep it as choose one, and then allowed area, we will come to this later. And now this is where you can define that what attribute access you want to give for this layer. Always remember that geom is the attribute that you will have to give for any layer, doesn't matter what is your another condition, because if you don't give access to the geometry, Geoserver will not be able to display this as a layer. So the geom is there, and then as you can see, we can do all this read and write. Whatever data that we want the user to access of Indian government, we can all turn that read write read write. So you can see there are so many layers. So obviously we are not going to do everything, but this is how you define the characteristic of that layer. So I will simply save this, and now my rule is saved. So the role that is assigned with this condition or with this rule is Indian GOV, and then users are all, services are all, requests are all, workspace is site, and then the layer is this, and then access is allowed, and then obviously address range is all. Alright, so this is how we can define as many rules as we want. I will now simply go to the rule one more time. I will select now the Indian public, and now I won't keep the star for now. I also have to define different rules for these two users. So I will first select class 1, and then inside service I can select what service I want to deal with. In this case I want to deal with all services, all requests, and then I will go to the site and then select layer one more time. Now I will head over to layer detail, and here I can repeat the same thing. Since I want the Indian data only, I will again keep this as a SQL filter with admin name is equal to India. And here then I can only select the data that I want to show. So for example, we want to show the name, we want to show the population, and then the rank. So I'm going to do that. So population max and then rank max. Alright, so the rule is defined. Next is class 2. So again the same thing, select Indian public, username as class 2, workspace as site, layer as this populated places, specify detail. Again SQL filter will be there, and this time we are going to select different attributes. So the attributes will be name, then I guess admin, and then the population. Alright, now this is done. And now we also want to define a general rule for the role Indian public, so that if user is not class 1 or class 2, what should happen? In that case, we want user to only see the data of India and the attribute of name. So for all users, notice that I'm not selecting normal, because again if I select that, then it will only work with the normal user, but I want to create this rule for all the users. So I will select that, I will go to the site, and then I will select the layer, and again inside layer I will put that as a SQL filter, and then just geometry and name, that's all. Alright, now the final rule. Now for the Asian, for all the users in Asian, what we want to do is we want to show the data of Asian countries. So now if I go to the layer tab and if I specify the layer detail, now for the SQL filter, if I go to the data one more time, there is no column which will give us the data as Asia. So we cannot do the SQL filter over here. If you browse through the entire data, you won't find that this country belongs to the Asian continent or anything else. So in that case, we now have to use something known as allowed area. So here we want to pass a polygon so that everything inside that polygon will be allowed. So the way to do that is you can simply go to geojson.io and then I'm going to just roughly create the polygon. So let's say from here to here, and now I will save this as a WKT because we need the data as a WKT. The Geofence rule always expects the data in a WKT format. So I will open this and I will copy this polygon, and once I paste this, if I save this right now, it will throw me an error that SRID is not available over here. So we also have to pass the SRID of that data. So this is a 4326, so I will pass that, and obviously I'm randomly going to select the columns that I want to show in this condition. Okay, now if I save this data, we have all our rules defined as per the Excel sheet. So you can see this is how we define the rule. This is how we define the rule based on layer and then its characteristics such as the SQL filtering or the allowed WKT region and also the attributes. Once this is done, this is ready for testing. We are not defining any admin rules because all of these users, all of these roles that we have created right now are not an admin. They are a normal user rules, right? If I go to the layer right now and if I search for the data, you can see that we can see all the data right now. Okay, are you ready for the magic? Now if I log in as an Asian user and if I look for the data, you will see that only one layer is accessible to me. And when I open that layer, you can see only data belonging to Asia is available over here. And now if I click anywhere to get the information, awesome. You can see we only have those columns which we defined. So this is how Geofence works, my friend. If I log out and if I log in as a class 1 user over here, if I go to layer preview one more time, only one layer is visible. Now if I check this though, you can see the data only belonging to India is available to me. And if I click, now what happened over here? If you remember correctly, we defined name and some another characteristics as well for class 1, right? But then why only name is visible? This is where the priority comes in. If I head over to my Geoserver one more time and if I log in using the admin account so that I can check the Geofence data rules, inside this, if you notice that this is of priority 1, that means whenever user will log in, first we will check the role and then we will immediately execute this command. We won't go here because on priority list this is at the top. So if I want to work with class 1 or class 2, obviously I will have to make this as a lesser priority. So whenever anyone from Indian public will log in, first we will check whether its username is class 2. If this is true, then we will execute this. Otherwise we will check whether its name is class 1. If it is true, then we will execute this. And if both of these conditions are not true, then we will go here where we have the star defined and then this condition will be executed. So I hope by now you understood the meaning of priority. Alright, now let's check whether whatever we have discussed right now is working fine or not. If I log in as a class 2 user, I go to the layer preview and if I check the open layers one more time, Again, the data is visible only for India. And if I click, I have name, admin name and population. So these were the attributes that we requested for class 2. If I log out and if I log in as a class 1, if I go to the layer preview one more time and check for the data, if I click, we now have rank, name and population. And now if I log in as a normal user, now if I go to the layer preview one more time and if I check this, you can see now if I click on the map, only name is visible. So this is exactly what we wanted, right guys? So this is how we define the roles. And finally, we can obviously check with Indian government as well. So gov, and then if I log in, layer preview, and then if I go over here, you can see we will only see the Indian data. And then when we click, we have all these different columns available for us. So this is how Geofence works. Finally, to end this video, we are now going to replicate whatever we have did right now in the web application as well. So why exactly we need to replicate that? I'll tell you. If I refresh this page, I can see the data, right? Because Geoserver is logged in as a government user. If I log out for now, and if I now try to refresh the data, it is not going to work. It is going to simply download the file, which tells me that this is not working. If I copy this and if I open a private browser to paste it, it's not going to work because the data is secured right now. That is why we also need to update our function which accepts the username and password so that the data can be seen. The code for that can be found on the GitHub gist, for which you can get the link down below. For this video, I am simply going to walk you through the code in very brief. So I will open my VS Code. So this is the code that we have, guys. I will make it a little bit bigger so that you can read. So what I have did is I have simply downloaded a sample code from OpenLayers and I have made a few changes. So if you have read the documentation of tile WMS correctly, inside that we have a property known as tile load function. So this allows us to execute some sort of function every time a new tile loads. So in that function, what I have did is I have basically created this function which takes the parameter of this header where I can then pass the username and passwords. So my username and passwords are written over here. So if I change it to, let's say, class 1, and then my password is same over here. So basically we will be using this username and password to authenticate the XML HTTP requests, and then for each tile load the XML request will be thrown, which will give us the image of PNG type back. And then once these requests are authenticated, then and then only you will see the data. Copy, paste. Alright, now if I load this data, if I go live with this function, you can see that if we head over to India, you can see that the Indian data is visible. If I change the name to GOV and then if I make the application live one more time, you can see that we are still seeing the Indian data. Now if I make it as Asian user, and if I save this and if I reload the application one more time, you can see that we are able to see the data across Asia. So you can see that whatever rules that we made are actually working. Finally, we can also check with the normal user and we are still able to see the Indian data. Fine. So the WMS part is sorted. Now what about fetching the data, or what about the WFS data? So before going into WFS, I will simply show you how exactly we can do get feature info, because I believe once I show you that, you can easily replicate the same way for the WFS requests as well. So if I scroll down, you can see that I have added this map.onClick function. This is quite normal function where we are creating the URL for the WMS source. But the change over here is that in the fetch request of the URL, I am again passing the authorization. So these are the same username and passwords that we entered in our Ajax request. If I now go to my browser one more time and if I open the console just to show you the result, if I click on any point right now, this will basically fetch me the data. So you can see that this is a normal user, right? And if I check the feature and if I check the properties, you can see only name is returned. So this is what we had. If I switch the user to class 1 and if I refresh the application and again if I click on the point, I will get the feature, and then this feature now will have properties like name, population, and then the rank. If I switch it to GOV, if I save this and if I click again, features, properties, and then you can see multiple properties. So this confirms that whatever Geofence rules that we had given earlier are actually working in a WMS as well as WFS format. This is everything that we wanted to cover in this Geofence Geoserver video. I hope you guys like this video and I hope this really solves your problem of security in your Geoserver project. Feel free to reach out to me if you need any other information. Make sure that before going out you subscribe to this channel. Thank you.